What's up everyone, Darcblade here with another guide to Monster Hunter Rise. In this video, we're going to be showing off another pre-Sunbreak build, this time for the insect glaive. Now, what is a pre-Sunbreak build? Well, it's a endgame Monster Hunter Rise build that we can take into the start of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak and take on the early Master Rank quests quite comfortably and effectively. Whilst yes, Master Rank armor will quickly replace this build, this is giving you the best possible head start. Now before we get into this, if you're enjoying the builds, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a thumbs up on the video, as we're always bringing you more builds for Monster Hunter and more. When it comes to the insect glaive, it's not a skill-hungry weapon. As its unique mechanic enables it to become airborne, you gain an element of survivability when you take to the skies. This means that you don't have to heavily invest in defensive skills, and instead can focus on damage-related skills or quality of life skills. And that is what I've done with this build. The pre-Sunbreak build I'll be demonstrating is a balanced insect glaive build that combines DPS elements with quality of life elements. So for this build, you'll first need the Kaiser Crown, then the Vike Mail S, the Valstrax Braces, Anjanath Coil S, and the Hunter's Greaves S. You'll then have the Petalace of your choice, to which I've gone for a Absolute Petalace, and then for your Talisman, unfortunately this is down to personal preference, but the core skills of this build have all been covered through decorations and the armor, so you can use a talisman with skills that you desire. I'm using a talisman, for example, that has maxed out Divine Blessing for some extra survivability and quality of life, a point in the recovery up skill, a tier 3 decoration slot, and then a tier 1 decoration slot. As for the weapon, I'm using the Evening Calm, which is the Nagakuka insect glaive with an attack boost rampage skill attached to it. As for your Kinsect, these again are down to personal preference, although I'd recommend using an assist or speed Kinsect. Now when it comes to the decorations, first of all I'd recommend going for Tenderizer Jaws to max out weakness exploit, and then optional jaw of a steadfast jaw to max out stun resistance, critical jaws for crit boost, mastery jaws to max out master's touch, grinder jaws to max out speed sharpening, and then an attack jaw for a point in attack boost. This attack boost jaw is kind of optional though. So if you've done what I've done here, you'll have an attack of 247, which will be higher once you have your Kinsect extracts. You have no element with white sharpness, and you'll have 55% base affinity. This can easily be 100% when you take into account weakness exploit as well. You'll also have an okay defense of 497 that is strong against fire, neutral against dragon, but slightly weak to the other elements. As for the switch skills, like with every weapon, I say they're down to personal preference. It depends on your playstyle, so go with whatever you personally prefer to use. Some switch skills obviously benefit DPS, while others benefit your survivability. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you have attack boost at level 5, which it will be at least level 4. Attack boost is a skill that increases the raw attack of a build. You'll then have critical eye at level 3. This is a skill that increases the base affinity of this build. To be honest, you really only need critical eye at level 2, but critical eye at level 3 is thanks to the Kaiser Crown we're using. As with critical eye at level 3, we actually kind of technically go over that 100% affinity when we take into account weakness exploit. You'll then have critical boost at level 3. Critical boost is a skill that increases the damage of our critical hits, but only applies to the raw portion of an attack. And as this build is all about raw attack, critical boost works really well. You'll then have weakness exploit at level 3. Weakness exploit is a skill that increases our affinity whenever we're attacking monster weak points. Weakness exploit at level 3 can potentially provide us an extra 50% affinity. You'll then have Master's Touch at level 3, which is a skill that grants us an 80% chance of consuming no sharpness when we crit a monster, and as this build has that 100% critical rate, so long as we're going for monster weak points, we should see minimal sharpness loss with this build. You'll then have Divine Blessing level 3, a result of our Talisman, but is a useful quality of life and defensive skill, which gives us a chance at taking 50% reduced damage when we take a hit from a monster. You'll then have Stun Resistance at level 3, which is a personal favourite of mine, that prevents all stun effects on our hunter. You'll then have Speed Sharpening at level 3, allowing us to quickly sharpen our weapon should we lose the white sharpness. And then finally you'll have two byproducts, first being Recovery Up, which slightly increases the amount of health we recover from drinking potions and such, and then you'll have Dragon Heart at level 1, which when your health is at 50% or lower you'll contract Dragon Blight, but all your element resistances are set to 30. So there we have it, that is the stats for the balanced insect glaive build. Now remember, when it comes to the skills, Divine Blessing is kind of optional. In all honesty, this build works without it. This means that you have a lot to play with when it comes to your talismans. With your talismans you can add some more damage if you want to this build by maxing out attack boost. Or you could invest in something else like Evade Window. There are options depending on what talismans you have available to you. But regardless, every build in Monster Hunter has its pros and cons. No build is absolutely perfect. When it comes to this balanced insect glaive, one of its biggest pros is it has decent damage output. Whilst not the highest possible damage for an insect glaive build, it still has enough points in various damage based skills like attack boost, critical eye, critical boost, weakness exploits, so on and so forth, that you should be able to take on monsters quite quickly, at least for the insect glaive. The next pro is that this build has quite a few quality of life skills, from Master's Touch, so you don't have to worry about sharpness, to Divine Blessing, which adds to our defense aspects, to stun resistance and speed sharpening. These all help the hunts feel a little bit more easier than they are. And then finally for the pros is that this build can be used against any monster. As it's an elementalist build, we don't have to worry about a monster's elemental or element resistances, so we can use it against any monster we may face at the start of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. But of course there are cons to every build out there. The two biggest cons for this build are unfortunately the Nagakuga insect glaive we are using has relatively low raw attack, but this is kind of countered thanks to having white sharpness, as well as that 100% affinity and the various DPS skills we have. And the other con is, unfortunately, we have no skills that are linked to maintaining our Kinsect extract buffs. So we have to refresh the Kinsect buffs quite often with this build. But that may be considered more of a con with the weapon itself. Yes, it can be alleviated with builds, but it is something every insect glaive player has to deal with. But overall, this is a great balanced build for the insect glaive. It's got a little bit of everything, in all honesty. And whilst you may not complete hunts super quickly, you're going to be able to easily survive the hunts and have an easier time overall when you use a build like this. If you don't mind taking a few extra minutes to take down a monster, then I would highly recommend this build. And that is why I am personally recommending it as the Pre-Sunbreak build for the insect glaive. So there we have it, that is another Pre-Sunbreak build done. What are your overall thoughts? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you a Pre-Sunbreak build for the insect glaive in Monster Hunter Rise. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.